you've come forward with some information regarding our investigation into allegations of corruption and police misconduct by Ms. Constance Trujillo. Can you tell us what you know about the case? You were an officer employed by the Hazel Crest Police Department. Tell us what you know about this case and give us some background.
Okay. During the time I met Miss Constance, I was working light duty due to myself being involved in a traffic crash. So at that time, I'm working the day shift, and basically, as a working officer working light duty, I was basically sitting up front of the radio room. Um, I was also taking paper report for um, people who come into the station to sign complaints or to also to let us know about a crime that took place or just need a paper report for burglary or whatever such crime that occurred. On this particular day, I was sitting up front, and one of the dispatchers said to me, she said, "Officer Nora, do me a favor." I said, what you need?" She said, "Could you help this poor lady?" Um, she said, "All the officers here are basically blowing her off, not listening to her problems that's going on. They blowing her off. They're not taking reports. She's been coming to the police department every day on the afternoon shift, and those guys is basically telling her to come back to tomorrow, come back tomorrow. Each day she'll come back, and they basically giving her a runaround." So she asked me to do a paper report for this lady, sit down and talk to her. And on that particular day, that's when I learned about some of the things that was going on in her situation. And at that point, I wrote a paper for theft, and I believe theft of a firearm. That she kind of told me, she kind of shared with me some of the things she been going through with the Hazel Crest Police Department. But I basically told her I had no knowledge about these things that was going on because I was hurt in the line of duty, and I was basically working inside on light duty, basically doing paper report and also filing paper. Um, so I guess some of the officers knew I took report on her, and they basically told me, you're wasting time taking her report because she's 1096. 1096 is a code. We use everything that's 10 codes, and 1096 is uh, a mental person who's not in their right mind. So they were saying to me that she was crazy and not to listen to her because she's out of her mind. And that's basically what I know about this situation that's going on with her in the police department. That is correct. Yes, and I have no knowledge of all the times she reported to the police department. Officers basically had told me that she was coming basically every day, and that they was giving her the run around basically, and they turned, they were blowing her off.
Hazel Crest police officer, Sergeant Derek Cathy. And Sergeant Cathy, you've looked into this matter and you actually had a role in both providing protection to Ms. Trujillo during one of the incidents where she accuses her husband of abuse. But you're also aware of a burglary that took place in her home that the police failed to investigate. Thus far, the Hazel Crest police chief has refused to arrest Mrs. Trujillo's former husband for burglary, and there's quite a bit of evidence that he broke into the home. What can you tell us in regards to this allegation?
When she was gone for whatever time period that he then entered the home, against a court order that she had, and she has a filed copy of that court order. For my belief is she told me that she submitted that to the police department with some other information as far as everything that was taken out of her house alleged by him to have been taken, the person to take it, and that there was, as far as she can see, it's been a long time between that time and now, and little or nothing was done.
In just a few moments, we'll be on the line live with Carlos Martin. Carlos accuses a Richland County Sheriff's deputy of abuse and excessive force. We believe that there's substantial evidence corroborating his allegations. Mr. Martin was falsely charged with several criminal offenses, including resisting arrest. Those charges have been thrown out, and to this day, the deputy has not been disciplined or punished. The irony in this story is that Mr. Martin was he was in uniform. He was on his way home from work. He had not committed a crime. In fact, he was putting his key into his own front door when this assault started. We think the case is an outrage, and we are going to the FBI requesting assistance and an investigation. This is a live interview with Carlos Martin. And Mr. Martin, you had a complaint with the Richland County Sheriff's Office that policeabuse.com is looking into. And what you reported is that you came home from work one day and you were assaulted by a Richland County Sheriff deputy. Is that essentially what happened to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I want to go over a few things preliminarily before we even get into the details of your case, because I want to first establish your credibility and make sure that anyone who's looking at this interview will get the sort of information that they would need to render a fair evaluation of what you're complaining about. At the time that you were contacted by the Richland County Sheriff's Office, did you have any warrants, any tickets, any outstanding violations that would allow an officer to arrest you?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. I'm going to switch cameras here in a moment, and I'm going to move to your live feed. Just a moment here. I'll have it up on the screen in a moment. Okay. I've got you on the screen right now. How old are you, sir?
I'm 31 years old, sir.
Okay. Mr. Martin, you had an incident with the Richland County Sheriff's Office, and I'm going to briefly discuss that incident in a moment. I also want to discuss a few things that will include some of the evidence you've presented, and I'm going to discuss your own credibility so that we can get a clear picture for anyone who's evaluating what we're doing in this case and what you're reporting. Let me start with who you are and what your assignment is in terms of, at the time that this incident happened, what you were doing for a living. How old are you, and what was your duties and job at the time that you had an encounter with Richland County Sheriff's Department?
Well, I'm 31 years old, and at the time, I was a specialist in the United States Army, and I was a medical records clerk. I worked at Montreat Hospital. Okay. And at the time that you had this encounter with the Richland County Sheriff's Office, did you have any warrants? Were you wanted? Was there any reason that someone in law enforcement would have a reason to arrest you or contact you? Not at all, sir.
Okay. And on the day that this incident happened, you were on your way home. You were actually at your own front door.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Now, back to a few more details in terms of your own credibility. Did you have any sort of a lengthy record of criminal activity, anything that might alarm an officer if he were to run your name? Were there any problems at all?
Not at all, sir.
Okay.
I might have had a speeding ticket, but all my speeding tickets were paid.
Okay. So the most you've had in terms of any sort of serious violation is a speeding ticket?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And you were active duty in the military when this incident happened?
Yes, sir. I was in my uniform when it happened.
You were wearing your military uniform?
Yes, sir. I was in my Army uniform, sir, when this happened.
Okay. At your front door?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this is where the story gets a bit bizarre, and so I want to give you time to fill in the blanks. But let me tell you, in terms of what you told me, what I recall of your incident. You pulled up, got out of your car, were going into your home when you were contacted by a Richland County deputy. The deputy engaged you in conversation at some point during the conversation, you said to him, "Hey, dude," as a bit of exasperation, saying, "Hey, dude," and you were explaining to him how he could verify your identity, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And upon saying, "Hey, dude," to him, the officer or the deputy became angry and then attacked you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll get into the actual attack in a moment, but at the time that you said, "Hey, dude," were you trying in any way to offend him, or were you doing anything that was illegal or a problem?
Not at all, sir.
Okay, and the most you said to him was, "Hey, dude." You didn't use any profanity. You just said that to him as a way of explaining that he could find out who you were and you had ID and all the information was readily available, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, you had already provided him your identification. Am I right?
Yes, sir. I provided him 3 different forms. I have provided him my military ID card. I provided him my Germany user license, and I provided him a paper license from Alaska because I lost my picture license while I was over in law school, Germany.
Okay. Was there any reason for him to approach you?
Not at all, sir. No.
Okay. And what did he say to you when he approached?
Basically, when I got home, there was a police officer in the neighborhood. I was riding behind the police officer. As the police officer was heading towards the direction of my house, our parking lot is shaped as a rectangle. So he entered the rectangle first. I came behind him, and then I entered the rectangle. I acknowledged him because I thought he was one of the regular police officers that lived in the neighborhood by nodding my head. His report, he took it as I was teasing him. Well, where I'm come from, it's almost kind of like a cowboy tilting his hat toward the person. Just a head nod is more than likely just saying hello. I can't understand why he would take it any as disrespect or any type of other way. So I parked my car. I got out my car, rolled up my windows. I got out my car, and I started walking towards my door. As I was walking towards my door, just as I was about to pull the keys in the door, I hear a car peel off. So I turned around to see what was going on in the neighborhood. So as I turned around, an officer started running towards me. He said, hey, you, come here. I said, who, me? He said, yes, you. I said, how may I help you, sir? He told me that he was out there for a noise violation. I told him that it couldn't have been me because I just got home. And plus I have a Richmond County police officer that lives right above me, so I know not to blast my music. And that's when he asked me for my identification. I gave him 3 different identifications. I let him know that I had just got back from Germany and that I had user tags still on my Explorer. And if he looked, that he could see. And he began to become hostile because I guess he didn't understand the identification that I had gave him. And I was like, I didn't mean any disrespect by it, but I did say, dude, if you just calm down, because he was yelling at me, because he was like, well, what the hell is this? I was like, dude, if you just calm down, you can see that I just got back from Germany, and these are my identifications. And next thing you know, he told me that I would not identify him as dude, that he is a Richmond County officer of the law. I said, well, you identified me by hey, you. He said, well, that's because I don't know your name. And I said, well, sir, I don't know your name either. And that's when he snapped.
Okay, and when you say he snapped, he got angry and he then got physical?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what exactly did the officer do to you? Describe it for me.
The officer slammed me down to the ground. He started punching me, kicking me. He used a whole can of mace. The police officer's mother seen the officer on top of me hitting me, and she ran downstairs and she went and got my wife at the time, who is now my ex-wife, who was studying for nursing school, went and got her to come help. And Tatiana came outside and was taking pictures of the situation.
So let me make sure I have this correct. You pull up at your own home. You're in military uniform. You see a police officer as you're passing into the neighborhood, and you give him an acknowledgement by nodding to him as a way of showing your respect and acknowledging him as another person that you actually wanted to basically wave at. You were using your head as a sign of acknowledgement. The officer got somewhat bitter by this or had a problem with it, but at some point you then had that officer contact you at your door and attack you after you said the words, hey, dude.
Yeah, that is correct. The officer acknowledges the fact that I did acknowledge him. He said that I was bobbing my head, and he took it as me teasing him. I don't understand how someone can tease you by a head nod, but he said that out of his own mouth, which is documented on his own testimony.
Okay, so he drew the conclusion that you were trying to be smart with him.
He stated that I was teasing him by nodding my head.
You were
I don't know how
teasing.
you can do that, but
Okay.
Time from my head now is just a gesture.
Okay. Was there any intent on your part to offend him or do anything that wouldn't be proper?
Definitely not at all. Definitely not.
Okay. And when you saw the officer, you didn't give him any other gesture that he might find offensive or anything like that, correct?
No, sir. I cooperated. I did everything that the officer asked me to do.
Okay.
It didn't become anything didn't become an issue until when I had cause and duty.
Now, when you say he attacked you, you said he emptied a can of mace on you. How did he do that, and why did he use an entire can?
I'm not sure why. I can't speak for why the officer used an entire can. But when he slammed me on the ground, I was laying on my stomach, and I used my arm to protect myself. I mean, I am a trained soldier, so what I did was I closed my eyes and I held my breath like we're taught when we go to the gas chamber. And because I didn't react like the normal civilian would react, he became more violent. He was asking me if I was on drugs and all this other different type of stuff because I did not react like the normal civilian reacted. He started making all these racial comments, talking about how he's glad that Johnny Cochran is dead, how he's going to ruin my career, welcome to the South. I'm nothing but another black statistic. I mean, that's just ridiculous the way the police officer was acting.
Whoa. He said, wait a minute. He said to you that you're just another black statistic?
Yes, sir.
And he was ridiculing Johnny Cochran.
Yes, he said that he was glad, he was basically saying that how he was glad that Johnny Cochran is dead and that I'm nothing but another black statistic and how he was going to ruin my career. He said, welcome to the South, that he's Richland County and he can get away with anything.
He actually told you he could get away with anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The sad thing about it is everything the officer threatened actually came true because now my career is over with. I am out the military, so everything that he said basically came true.
So he told you he was going to ruin your career.
Yes, sir.
And at this point, you're now out of the military and divorced, and things have fallen apart as he predicted.
Yes, sir.
Was the officer right in the other thing that he mentioned, that he would not be ever be punished?
Yes, sir. He said he was Richland County and he can get away with anything.
Well, let me ask you about that. You filed a complaint of police misconduct with the Richland County Sheriff's Office. Was that investigation thorough and complete and fair? And what was the outcome of their investigation?
Well, it was thorough enough for where we went to court. Judge Lee heard everybody's testimony, and we got a direct verdict for being not guilty.
Well, let me back up. The officer, after attacking you, charged you with crimes?
Yes, sir. He charged not only me, but he charged my ex-wife with a noise violation, disturbance of the peace, and assault on an officer while resisting arrest.
And all those charges were thrown out?
Yes, sir. We had multiple witnesses that stated that we never swung on the officers. We were never violent towards them. There was never a noise violation complaint. There was no decibel meter. The only person that supposedly had heard music was the officer. And when we went to court, we were vindicated of all those charges.
So the witnesses actually went to court and testified, confirming everything that you're telling me right now?
Yes, sir.
And the judge then threw it out?
Yes, sir. We had a landslide victory. The only issue with my case now is that when I'm trying to go to civil court, that Judge Anderson won't even give me a fair opportunity to go to civil court, and I don't understand why he would overrule state court when state court heard all of everyone's testimonies. The officers got on stand and they incriminated themselves by the things that they stated. They admitted to tampering with evidence, being racist, and everything else, and I don't have the opportunity to even go to civil court. I don't understand how that works.
Okay, well, let me back up. I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but let me go back to something you said a minute ago. You said all the charges were found not guilty and the evidence was abundant. With that in mind, what did Richland County do to the officer after they heard all the evidence?
Nothing. They're still working for Richland County, as far as I know.
Okay, so they're still in league with Richland County, and so far as you know, nothing's been done.
Say that again, sir?
I'm sorry. My question is, in terms of the response by the Internal Affairs Unit to the incident that you reported, they didn't do anything to the officer? I know that you mentioned the federal judge threw out the civil case. We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to focus on what Internal Affairs did and didn't do. Did Internal Affairs do a thorough job, and did they ever punished the officer after they had a chance to hear all the evidence?
As far as my knowledge of those, they did not do anything to the officers. The officers still are out there. I've seen Officer Fields in his car and everything else, riding around in his police car. So as far as I know, no, nothing has happened to the officers. But the investigation was thorough enough where Officer Fields admitted to the racial comments, even though he tried to justify why he said the racial comments, which doesn't even make any sense, like him stating that he's glad Johnny Cochran is dead. Well, I'm from Michigan. The reason why he said that, his justification was because I said I was going to get Jack Swirling. I'm not even from South Carolina. Now, how would I know who Jack Swirling is? And what does a white lawyer, who Jack Swirling happens to be, have anything to do with you being glad a black lawyer is dead?
So let me explain. Just go over this for a moment. It's not the most important point, but it is interesting and part of the mosaic here in terms of the officer's attitude. You're telling me that the officer made offensive remarks about Johnny Cochran, and I should state for the record that Johnny Cochran was my attorney and a personal friend of mine, so I do have a bit of bias in that regard. But in any event, he said that he made these comments about Johnny Cochran because allegedly you made comments in reference to some prominent civil rights attorney who was white in South Carolina, and that you were throwing that in his face, so he responded by criticizing and ridiculing Johnny Cochran?
And that's the thing. I don't even know who Jack Swirling is. I mean, I'm from Michigan, and so was my ex-wife at the time. And we're just getting to South Carolina. Why would we know who Jack Swirling is? It was just an excuse that he tried to come up with because he was being racist when he attacked us.
And he made up that excuse for internal affairs?
Yes, sir.
Did he testify to that in court as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now,
He wrote it down. It's not internal affairs, sir.
No, it's okay. One of the big inconsistencies in this story is this idea that you were making noise. Tell me about that and how that was determined to be false.
There was never a noise complaint. I have multiple witnesses that saw me arrive to my place of my residence that heard no music at all. There was never a decimal reading. The only person that supposedly had heard music was Officer Fields.
Okay.
And I want to also say, when we went to court, the witnesses didn't have to take the stand. The officers were the one on the stand, but the witnesses had wrote all their testimonies. While the officers getting on the stand and contradicting themselves from what they said in the internal affairs report and what they were stating in court, and them stating on record, well, I stand by both statements. The Judge Lee just had enough of the officers basically embarrassing the rest of the police officers by their testimony, and that's why she ruled the verdict that she ruled for us.
Okay. Let's talk about what actually happened to you. You said he jumped on you and was choking you and spraying you with mace. Were you injured? Was your wife injured? And I want you to go through the details from the point that the officer turned and attacked you. And let me just go over one more point because we are presenting this case to the FBI this morning. You didn't have a weapon, you didn't do anything to attack the officer, and you were proven in a legal courtroom not to have resisted arrest. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. I did not have a weapon. The only thing that was there was a cell phone that my ex was taking pictures of the officer. The officer had drew me down. He had one hand handcuffed. He was spraying me with mace. So me protecting myself because I was being falsely arrested, I grabbed my uniform with the other hand and I covered my eyes like this. And I was holding on to my shirt or my uniform so that way the mace couldn't get in my eyes, because that's the only way it will hurt you if you breathe it in or if it gets in your eyes. During that time frame, because I was not reacting like a normal person would to mace, because I'm a trained soldier, he became more violent. He was punching me, kicking me. He never choked me, but he was definitely punching me, kicking me, and kneeing me.
And what were your injuries as a result of what he did to you? Did you have bruises, scars, any injuries?
Yes, sir. I had bruises, scars. A lot of it was basically the PTSD. While the officers did this, when the other officers arrived to the scene, Officer Fields was on top of me, Officer Joseph Clark, and Officer Smith. They attacked my ex-wife. They ran up on her, pushed her against the car, put her in a full Nelson. Then they handcuffed her, and then they body slammed her into the ground, face first, or should you say chest first. Officer Fields is making me watch as these officers beat her up, not only beat her up, but sexually harass her. When the female officer got on the scene, they did not let the black female officer touch her at all. They told her that she couldn't do anything, and she was a female officer on the scene. 3 different male officers, to me, from my opinion, were sexually harassing my wife at the time. They did not use the back of their hands. They were definitely using the palm of their hands. And for her to be searched 3 different times by 3 different male officers where there's a female officer on the scene, I find ridiculous. And on top of that, when they put us in the back of the paddy wagon, which is on record they admit, they told her that they were going to take her to a hotel. How professional is that? What type of officer or reasonable officer would talk like that or do anything like that? Is this what, we describe as reasonable officers? I doubt that.
So officers, which Officer Fields or what other officer said to your wife that they would take her to a motel?
That was Officer Benjamin Fields.
The same officer that had beaten you up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, we're reporting your case to the FBI because we think there are civil rights violations here, and you certainly have proven that you didn't do anything wrong, particularly with a court verdict in that direction. What is it that you want to happen in terms of this officer, and what would you want the FBI or the Justice Department to do if they were to start an investigation?
I would love for them to look into his history, because I know I'm not the first person that he's done this to. When EMS arrived to the scene, EMS was like, they should have known that it was Officer Fields. The way all the other officers tried to collaborate and put all of it on Officer Fields. Officer Fields was not the only one. Joseph Clark, he was the one that slammed Tashiana. Officer Smith was the one who grabbed Tashiana. They tried to make it seem as if Officer Benjamin Fields did it all by himself, and that's not the case. They were behind us when they put us both in the car or whatever else. I asked the police officer, "Can I have the camera phone back?" Because I wanted to make sure there wasn't any new pictures of my wife at the time. So what they did was they said if we delete all the pictures, then they'll give us the phone back. I said, no, that's our evidence. Why would we delete the pictures? They confiscated our phone wrongfully, and not only did they do that, they deleted pictures also from the phone, which would show what actually happened to us.
So let me back up. So let me make sure I understand this, because what you're accusing them of is intentionally destroying evidence that they felt would implicate them in a crime. So what I'm asking you is this: are you telling me that Officer Fields took your phone, your cell phone, which had personal pictures, intimate pictures of your wife on it, pictures that you did not want anyone to see, and then bargained with you, telling you that if you allowed him to delete all the pictures, he would give you the phone back, but if not, he was going to take it with the pictures of your wife still on the phone?
They confiscated the wrong illegally. They confiscated the phone illegally, so that is absolutely correct. They tried to bargain with us to get us to delete all the pictures, which was evidence. We said no, that's on court record, because the lawyers brought that subject up. And out of all the police cars have cameras. How come out of all those police cars, their cameras were broke, their voice recorders were broke? Nothing worked? It's amazing that you guys do something wrong, and it's the cameras and the voice recorders are supposed to protect the citizen and the police officer. But this day, everything from Richland County that they used was broke. I don't understand how that happened.
So so wait a minute, you're telling me that there was no video, even though they have video on their patrol cars?
They said that the videos were broke.
The videos were broken.
Voice recordings. Yes, sir. On all the police cars that arrived to the scene, none of it worked, and it's just amazing how it happened not to work when officers are doing something wrong.
Okay. Final question, or a set of questions to you. In terms of the abuse that happened to you, how long did it continue in terms of this assault? How did it stop? Were you handcuffed and then taken to jail? How did you get out of jail? And did the city of Richland County, or the county of Richland County, did they ever apologize to you, compensate you in any way? Did they ever send you anything indicating that this officer was punished in any way or even retrained?
Well, we sat in the paddy wagon. I'm not for sure how long or whatever else that we were in the back of the paddy wagon. That night we spent the night in jail. We got out. The other lady who was a witness, who they put their hands on, which is Mrs. Sherry Lewis, they pushed. She's the one that came and got us out of jail that morning. I went back to the military, and it's not just, this one injustice had ripple effects. It's not just that injustice. It was everything that went behind it. I wound up losing my military career. I have PTSD. I have to go see a psychiatrist. I have to take medicine for the rest of my life because of this situation. My marriage is over. This is part of the reason why my marriage is over, from the stress and all the pressures of, our family coming trying to put money together so that way we can go to court to fight something that should have never happened. And it's amazing that, I can go fight for my country, but when I get back, there's nobody for my country to fight for me, and that's why I titled it A War on Friendly Ground. I mean, and not only was I a soldier, but my ex was a soldier who went to Iraq. I went to Bosnia. She just got back from Iraq. And we're out there protecting our country and our people, but then when we get home, there's no one to protect us. It's 2011, and people are still being racist. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's sad, not only just about race, but it's sad that police officers are taking advantage of their badges and abusing anyone. That's just ridiculous. You have a job, and it's supposed to be to serve and protect, not to just use your own ego to beat up on people whenever you want to.
And this officer appears to have gotten away with it.
Absolutely. And I really think that it's ridiculous that we go to court, we're proven not guilty on all charges. The noise violations, the police officers, now, this is what gets me, Mr. Canal. If we really beat up these police officers, if we really did something wrong, why did it take almost 4 years for us to get to court? If I really did something wrong to this police officer, which he stated it started from a noise violation, why didn't you show up to court on the noise violation? Because that charge was dismissed. If we really did something wrong. The fact of the matter is, we did nothing wrong. You were out there, you were being racist, you were being wild, you were being belligerent, you weren't honoring the uniform that you wear, and you took advantage of me and my family, me and my ex-family, and you destroyed my life, and it's not fair. And for us to go to court and Judge Lee see that, and for us to go to federal court to, the way the United States works is to be compensated through the lawsuit for Judge Anderson to rob us of that because we want to protect the police officers, I find ridiculous. I find it absolutely ridiculous because we were vindicated on all charges, and you don't even give us the opportunity to be, to have the opportunity to sue these police officers for what they did to us.
Understood. I think the FBI and the Justice Department should take a very strong look at this case. As I mentioned, I'm a police misconduct expert, and I can tell you there are multiple violations in terms of the conduct that you experienced, particularly with regard to the use of force, the racial slurs that were accompanying the conduct, and it appears the police reports that appear to be false and contradictory. Now, I'm going to go over this with you again in another interview, but why don't you talk for a moment as in a closing comment about some of the obvious contradictions or things that were proven to be untrue that the officer said while on the stand in your case.
Okay, that's not a problem. That's very easy. Officer Fields claims that he heard my music from 55 seconds away. But yet, in the same testimony, Officer Fields states that we made eye contact. Well, if you heard my music from 55 feet away, and we acknowledged each other, or you said we made eye contact, and you felt that I was teasing you, why wouldn't you stop me in my vehicle? Why wouldn't you turn your lights on and stop me while I'm in my vehicle? Why would you allow me to get out my car and walk to my door if supposedly you heard me from 55 seconds away? That makes no sense. If we didn't do anything wrong then, why would you delete evidence? Why wouldn't you turn your cameras on? Why would you try to justify about you wishing a black lawyer, or you're glad that a black lawyer did, but you claim that we yelled out we were going to go get a white lawyer? What does that have to do with a black lawyer?
I'm sorry, Carlos, did you make the Richland County Sheriff's Department aware of the problems with this officer's testimony versus the facts as they were obviously available to anyone to see? Did you tell them that these were contradictions?
In internal affairs, and then Mr. John Mobley, who was my lawyer at the time, had did so on the stand.
Okay.
And Officer Fields and Officer Joseph Clark took the stand. And it's on court record where Officer Fields and Clark, they say they're standing by, well, I stand by both statements. Well, how can you stand by both statements? How can you say one moment you mean this, and then the next moment you mean something that's totally different, and then say you stand by both statements? That's how ridiculous my case was. That's how ridiculous that these officers were. And, you know, yeah, asking me a question, if anything could happen, of course, they shouldn't be on the force. If you're not going to do your job, if you're not going to live up to your responsibility, then you don't need that job. If I don't do my job as a soldier, somebody else's son or daughter loses their life. And you took that from me. You took the opportunity for me to defend my country, rightfully so. You took that from me. And then you embarrassed me, you know what I'm saying, in front of the military. You embarrassed me. Because the military wound up looking at me and blackballing me for something that I never did. And then once they found out that I didn't do anything wrong, it was too late. Now I'm medically discharged. I mean, I come from a military background. My mother is the first sergeant. And you robbed me of my own glory of defending my country. And I don't think that's fair at all.
Okay, Mr. Martin, we're going to conclude at this point. In a few moments, we will be calling the FBI and the Justice Department. I want you to stand by. We also have a news reporter who's going to be interviewing you in just a few moments. I want to thank you for taking the time to tell your story to policeabuse.com.